Well, since I have the floor, I will continue. I want to welcome everybody. I'm Sheila Furr. I'm a psychologist, facilitator, child specialist, all those things that psychologists do. And I'm here because I'm co-chair of the Outreach Committee. And I have the pleasure of introducing our guests today, who are going to be our speakers for Grand Rounds. Grand Rounds started, oh gosh, a couple of years ago, and it's an opportunity to hear about cases and interesting things that have happened in cases. So we're glad to have such good attendance this morning. So Deborah Silver is a psychologist who's APEP means she's board certified. She's been doing this a long time. She's currently working as a researcher at the Neuropsychiatric Research Center in Southwest Florida. She has a lot of experience as a psychologist, and she's been a teacher, a rehab counselor, guidance counselor, and a school psychologist, and certainly somebody who has been in the world of peacemaking and working with families for a very long time. She served as president of the Florida Association of Family Conciliation Courts. She's been involved in lots of other organizations that are in our world. She's been a mental health coach, parenting coordinator, parenting facilitator, family, individual, and couples therapist, and has done a whole bunch of things. And like many of us who've been around for a while, her career has really evolved, and she has some interesting things to tell us about her work. Shelley, of course, is one of our members of our group. He received his University of Florida BA a long time ago, 1965. He's been in the University Hall of Fame. He was in Vietnam as a U.S. Army captain, got his JD at UF. He's a member of Florida Bar Association, and he has the distinction of being the first mediator in Southwest Florida in 1983. He's board certified in Maryland family law, Martindale-Hubbell AV rated attorney, Florida super lawyers. And when we think of Shelley, we think of him also as a peacemaker and doing cooperative as well as collaborative law. He's had lots of chairmanships, have been involved in lots of organizations. And he wrote in caps in his resume, "I love my job." So we have speakers who are very experienced and very enthusiastic about the work we do. And they're here to talk about some of their experiences in cases when things get difficult and challenging and interesting. So I turn it over to Deb and Shelley.
Thanks so much, Sheila.
Sheila, thank you. It's always a pleasure to see you and everybody else. Thank all of you for being here today. We really appreciate the fact. I just want to amend Dr. Silver's intro, the fact that she is a researcher, but she's also spending time in working in collaborative law and working in extra professional organizations and so forth, because I don't remember a time over the last 40 years that Deb Silver and I have not been involved together in some outside professional group. And I think anybody from Lee County that knows us knows that that is accurate. And I would further just simply want to say that I've been working in collaborative law since about 2001. Have had well over 100 cases.
Well, Shelley, time out. You forgot. We were comparing notes this morning about when we had our first case together. And actually, we didn't know it was a collaborative case, but when we reflect on it, it was in the mid-'80s, and it was a family that I had seen, I'd seen their children for school assessments. And when the parents decided to get divorced, they came to me asking, well, how do we do this? And I knew you, and I knew Alan Rubenstein, and those were the tough days. I want you to describe them as you did before, but that we ended up, because the family was a very wealthy family, and because the children, who were the adults in the family, had a significant substance use issue, that they really didn't want the family monies to go into fighting. And so they really looked to Alan and Shelley to resolve this amicably, which you did. And you were able to initially get through their marital settlement agreement and the parenting plan without going to court. And that was the mid-'80s. So tell about what was it like here in Lee County in the mid-'80s?
Like I mentioned this morning, it was the Wild Wild West, and I was a litigator and a peacemaker, but I was evolving more and more into a peacemaker after taking mediation training in 1983 and becoming a mediator in 1983. I was actually out of court between 2008 and 2012, and that's when I had the bulk of all these collaborative cases, and I thought that was very, very helpful to me, and I learned an awful lot. But I'm very happy to be here with Deb Silver. Deb, is there anything else you want to say before we start?
Just that I'm so impressed with the collaborative process, that the creativity that we can establish. You know, Sheila knows as a psychologist, we always think about brains, and we think about where are we when we're in an adversarial setting. We're in the reptilian part of our brain. We're not in the frontal cortex of the brain, and that wonderful problem solving part of our brain. And about how you know, when we're working collaboratively, I'm going to share the screen now. Can you see that, Shelley?
Yes.
Great. So, and much like these animals in these funny pictures, that we're really working together and each having a little different role, but we manage to do our work in a much more relaxed and thoughtful way when we're in a fight or flight reptilian part of the brain. We're simply trying to survive, get through the moment as we would be in a court setting. But when we are engaged with people that we have a respected collegial relationship, magic happens. And it's why at 72, I never want to stop working. I love this work and love working with folks like Shelley. And there's somebody right now I have the joy of working with on this call, and Kathy Mills. And we've been having the best old time with a really, these are not simple cases, challenging cases, but each taking their own role to problem solve and do a lot of the things that Shelley and I will be talking about today.
All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to discuss, if we have time, and I hope we will, 4 cases. And after each case, we're going to open it up to interactive discussion, questions, shared experiences, and then we're going to go to the next case. We're going to discuss with each case some of the facts, some of the challenges, and some of the learning points. So our first case was a case that was referred by our local legal aid society. And of course, you understand what that would be. So it was some folks who really didn't have much by way of financial wherewithal.
Other than debt, right?
Mostly debt and debt service. And it was a young married couple, and they've been separated for a while. And in between the times of the separation, Deb, the mom, she had another child, and didn't he also have another child?
Yes, they both ended up, you know, which complicated that divorce from the legal standpoint, that, you know, both of them within the context of still officially being married, they had each of them new children, and they were living with new partners.
Now, in that particular case, I'll share with you all that Keith Grossman and I were the lawyers in that case. Dr. Silver was the coach facilitator in that case. And we had, basically, we were all volunteers. And we had 2 volunteers, financial professionals, 2 volunteers, 2 financial professionals, and basically a case involving indigent, close to indigent folks. Now, you all may find that ironic. I certainly thought that that was ironic until we got done with the case.
Right.
That's a part of what we're going to be talking about. But the 2 specialists were Todd McGee, who has since retired. He's a financial professional, CPA, mediator, been very involved in years and years in our local group that we have here, and Trish Garthefner, and Trish has been involved with the FACP. She was a past treasurer of this group. So we were the professionals involved with this family. And there's mentioned, Deb, there was a 3-year-old boy.
Right. That was the child that they actually shared together, darling little boy.
Yeah.
And they both loved him very much.
Mom
And-
was 24, dad was 25.
Right.
He was a server, wait staff person, but at that point, I mean, she didn't seem to me, Deb, that she was able to do much. I mean,
Right. She
for
didn't.
herself. But she
Right.
certainly was a go-getter. There was no question about it.
Right. And she was fiercely, remember this, fiercely independent. She didn't want to take any money from her husband, who was a sheriff's deputy. And the way she saw it was, I just rather have the decision making. It was almost like, this is my baby and my little boy. And yes, I'll share him with you, but I don't want to have to depend on you for anything financial. So even to the detriment of her son, which, you know, ultimately these financial experts were able to show both of them. No, you know, you're both financially responsible, and there are ways that we can show you that it's actually going to cost everybody less money to cooperate and allow a transfer of financial support. Mainly, you know, he had health insurance, and at first, you know, she was trying to avoid accepting any help. So it was really Trish and Todd who jumped in at that point to say, what are you guys thinking of? You need to be looking at the financial aspects of this, and you need to be taking the money, the little money that you have, and deploying it in different ways that will really enhance quality of life for everyone, including your new children.
Well, now, just, you know, in addition to the actual facts of the case, that these people were very needy, they didn't understand how to manage their funds that they had. And so
Right.
they were so much in debt, and they had no plan to get out of debt, quite
Right.
frankly. So this was not only collaborative flaw, dissolution of marriage, but this was a situation in which, without the help of the financial professionals, no, with the help of the financial professionals, we were able to help them understand their financial plight and have a plan for them to be able to ultimately get out of debt as a part of this. Now, in my experience, when I represented folks who really can't afford to pay me, often I don't get a lot of consistent assistance from those folks. Sometimes they show up, sometimes they don't. And we had similar circumstances. This divorce, I mean, the professionals really persevered because we had a hard time getting through all of these meetings that we had scheduled. Deb, do you remember that?
Oh yeah, I remember that the mom ended up going into labor just before, and you know that created issues. That the challenge of that, and then he, I guess his girlfriend had a birth, and it was compromised. So there were delays along the way, but Trish and Todd hung in there with us and continued to connect with the parties and guide them through their various, you know, they had bills to pay, and they had responsibilities to meet, and they were instrumental in addressing that. For me, doing the parenting plan was easy because they both had, it was basically memorializing the plan that they put together already, and we're working in a really great spirit. That was a really good part of it.
They really were working well together. Their significant others were helpful. They weren't in session, but they weren't impeding the process at all. And so you can see the slide, the learning moment, and that's basically the fact that when you've got a situation like this, you know, you think you're doing this pro se collaborative situation, whether you do pro se collaborative, mediation, whatever it might be with pro ses, that there's this element of how deeply in debt are these folks? and what can you do to help these folks? So our lesson learned was we really needed to have the extra financial expertise to really help these folks with the process. And the second slide here reminds me of what Michael Lang, who's past president of the Association of Family Mediators. I took my training from John Haynes, who was the first president of that group way back in the 80s, early 80s, and Michael was president in the early 90s. But what he told me one time was that when you get to the point where you've got consensus with the parties, with the clients, and everything looks fine, and you're ready to draft that agreement, take some time and look and see if there's anything else that can be done to help these folks have a better agreement. What else can be done to help these folks? And we do that often. Sometimes in our collaborative cases, we will also maybe assist the parties with regard to the idea of, well, now, would estate planning be appropriate for you all at this point, now that we've discussed, your situation, and we've mentioned your adult children and their families, so forth and so on. So that is another way. And I'm sure some of you here have been engaged in subsequent estate planning as well, following the collaborative divorce. So is there anything else? Is there any comments that we would have from any of you that are out there that you would like to share with us?
Right, experiences that you might have had with folks where you got a surprise, where you thought initially it's this kind of a case, but then you realize, wow, there's so many other ways we can be helpful.
If there are no comments at this point, we'll go on.
It looks like
Shelley.
Oh, yes.
there
Shelley,
is a virtual hand.
Okay.
I have a question and a comment and a question. First of all, I think, it's interesting that you can take what you've learned in a pro bono case and apply it in every one of our cases. I'm in a case right now in which, while the husband may make about $250,000 a year, they're several $1 million in debt. So, and we're going to have to help them through this whole process. But my question is, would you give us a description? I'm intrigued by the fact that you had two financials. How did they, and I know both of them very well. Can you describe how they worked as a team?
Wow.
It was pretty flawless, really. They both sort of took a back seat and were very contemplative and reflective.
And you know what helped that, Shelley? That Trish was our scribe. This was her first collaborative case, and she was there to observe, but then she became a vital participant. And she's the one who was taking all the notes and sort of structuring us. And then, and so then she had her contributions just as Todd had his.
Now, Ed, you absolutely make a great point, but I would also tell everyone this, that we have had, and I'm sure you all have had, professionals who've never had a collaborative case, and they want to view the process, or they want to participate as a scribe, or they want to just be able to view with the consent of the parties and the attorneys and so forth. And I used to do that when I was a mediator too. And I would have mediators who needed more experience. They just that, the mediation training, and they didn't know the first thing, how the process works. I would agree, they would come in with the consent of the parties and so forth, and I would put them to work. I would be like we would do in our collaborative cases. Ask them, if you think that you can be of assistance in this process, in addition to volunteering and just appearing, what else can you help us with in this process? And usually that works out very well, very well.
Yeah, yeah, I think it
Right.
speaks for, I think it speaks for the having them be scribes. I would tell you that David Smith and I had that exact same experience. David was new. We brought him in as a scribe. He worked with me. These people needed other financial help and it worked. So yeah.
Isn't that incredible that as someone, you, as an observer, you know, to develop that kind of comfort that you can find in a collaborative situation, and they felt so comfortable that they, you know, that Trish really was eager to contribute, and it was magic, really magic.
Are there any other comments? Can we go? Okay. This is the second case. Does anybody recognize the fellow there with the beard? That's okay if you don't. You have to be old too. They're
Yeah, you do, right. Uh-huh.
Well, this is a situation that I'm sure most of you who've had your collaborative cases, and all of you who are here have had this experience, and that is when you're dealing with contentious parties and you're dealing with parties who can hardly help themselves, to have them manage their emotions and their feelings. And in collaborative, it's more paramount because we have these 4, 5-way, 6-way meetings and we're all together. That's how we get through the process. So it's more significant and more important that in a collaborative process that the clients are able to manage their emotions, manage their feelings, be appropriate in their demeanor. Well, we had this one particular case, and maybe the fact that we had this one, Deb and I've had several of these over the
Right.
years, but we've had
Right.
this one particular case a couple years ago, and it was a situation where the husband was sly devil, and he was subtle, but he was very disrespectful, and he would say things to egg on his wife, who was totally unable to manage her emotions and
Right.
her anger. And so she would just blow up, and the 4-way conference, we'd have to take a break or we just have to stop.
Right.
And it happened almost every single time.
Right.
But we hung in there because we felt like we could help these folks, and we felt like they both expressed to us that when we explained to them that the way that they were acting wasn't helping them and it wasn't going to get to their goals, was there any reason for us to continue to work with them? And of course they said, yes, we want to work with you, and so forth. So we did, but we finally had to just stop the process. We just weren't able to finish with them.
Right. They were both very self-focused individuals, exceedingly bright, but from much different backgrounds. She was a physician's assistant, and she had a lot of educational training, but she grew up in the foster care system as a child. And I think she always felt less than her husband, who came from this very devout Christian background, and he was mainly wanting to keep her under his thumb and subtly denigrating her. And despite a lot of work outside of our meetings, that, you know, that dynamic, no matter what, that, you know, I worked diligently. If she would stop reacting, we would be able to see more of what he was doing to work at cross purposes. We were able to get a parenting plan accomplished for them, and that turned out to be a real benefit. And the follow-up I got was they did take what Shelley and Keith put together to another attorney. And in essence, Shelley and Keith did all the heavy lifting and got no credit for, because the other attorney just memorialized what they had already put together. And it was sad, because I think that if they had hung in there even longer, that their marital settlement agreement would have been, you know, much more helpful moving forward.
Are there any comments, questions, concerns? Anyone care to ask anything or share with us anything?
I will.
Okay.
I will. Hi, Shelley.
Hi.
How are
Gee,
you? It's Randy. So nice to see
yeah,
you.
Randy.
And Deborah, I've heard so much about you and I've never heard you speak. So I'm very happy to see you. I just want to share about a collaborative matter that I'm on right now where the clients are really acting out, much like you're describing. And we as a team, we have a really great team and we began to strategize. And when I say acting out, I'm talking about violence in front of their children. They were living together. And we called a meeting as a team and we did the Pauline Tesler thing. And we said, you know, we don't really think this process is for you.
Huh.
And we don't know how to help you unless you allow us to, because we would give them guidance and they wouldn't follow it. You know, I created they had to live in their house together because they couldn't afford to separate right now.
Wow.
And they just couldn't stay apart. We did a kind of nesting situation in the house and they just weren't taking it seriously. So we called a meeting yesterday and we said, listen, we really want to help you, but we don't know if this process is right for you. And
Right.
we don't know if you can follow our lead. And if you can, then we'll continue and we know we can help you. But if you won't, then we're withdrawing. It's not about you withdrawing, it's about us withdrawing. We're all going to, and we as a team all decided that we're going to withdraw and you're on your own. And so they sat up like with little children. We were responsible parents. And we said, you have a choice. We'll stay in or we'll get out, but it's going to be up to you. And I met with them for an hour and a half last night, and we developed a nesting situation that they could afford and manage, and we're on our way, and we'll see. But I think sometimes, we as professionals want it more than they do, and we get too invested, and so in the outcome. And so there comes a time where we have to step back and set some guidelines and boundaries, and hopefully it'll work. So I'll keep you posted. But
Oh, that's wonderful. Congratulations. That is such a beautiful way to approach it with the power of your team, and that you lay it all out and remind them that the best helping hand is the one at the end of their own arms, and that you'll step away and allow them to continue doing it on their own if they wish. But that was powerful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll keep you posted. I'll let you know.
Yes. Prayers up.
Yeah, thank you.
Great.
So this next one, Shelley, as he talks about this next circumstance that he was dealing with, I had this view of often, Fort Myers really can feel very small, a small community, and that when you're maybe dealing with one other person or two people, you really have many more people in the room than you realize. These are people connected to them that you probably do know. And I remember a discussion with my son, with our son, David, and when he decided to move to Jacksonville, and he said, it's just so small, and I'm just getting sick and tired of this thing where I run into somebody, I want to have a relationship with them, and they look at me and they have this look on their face like, oh, I think I know who you are. Your parents are psychologists. So your dad is Dr. Bob or your mom is Dr. Deb. And he says it's like a speeding train coming at him. Well, living in a smaller community, Shelley has had those speeding train issues that he's going to be telling you about with this next one, where he was realizing what a small community that he lives in. Shelley, tell us about this.
I will. I will further clarify though that Fort Myers is a small city within Lee County. Lee County has approximately 750,000 people. With regard to the various other cities and localities that are within Lee County, but it's still small. The professionals, whether they be doctors, CPAs, attorneys, whatever. It's pretty small compared to the larger counties. So you get to know everybody, and there's a lot of advantages in coming from a small community and working together as professionals. But in some ways, it's not necessarily advantageous. So I was representing a wife client whose husband was a prominent realtor. His father, I knew his father before his father passed away, and his father left his prominent business to his son. I didn't know the son at that time. So the wife comes in and she needs help. She describes her husband as being very strong-willed, and if the divorce isn't going to go to his liking, he's going to hire Al Rubenstein. Okay, now that's the same person that worked with me and Dr. Silver in the 80s, because we were both litigators at that time. And she did not necessarily want to do that. She wanted to do a collaborative case. Well, his condition was, if I'm going to do a collaborative case, I want my real estate attorney to be my lawyer. Okay. So I don't know if any of you have been involved in a collaborative case where the other lawyer was not only not a family law attorney, well, wasn't trained in collaborative, but wasn't a family law attorney. Okay, well, that's only part of it. So as it turns out, I find out who his real estate lawyer is, and it's a person who I know, small town, who happened to have been a former collaborative client of mine, who, because of his behavior, the process failed. So this is the other lawyer. And so with great trepidation, I reached out to this other lawyer who I had some familiarization with outside the practice of family law and outside the collaborative law and so forth, because he was a prominent lawyer that worked with real estate developers and so forth. And personally, I was involved in some deals that involved him being the lawyer for the syndicates and so forth. So I knew him from that standpoint. So when I inquired of him to whether or not he understood that he would be involved in this, he says, yes. He says, I'm perfectly willing to do that. I don't know the first thing about divorce. I don't know, as you know, I don't know too much about collaborative since my case didn't work out well. And I said, well, what do you think? I said, do you think this process is going to work well? He said, yes. He says, but I'm going to need you. I'm going to lean on you. I'm going to depend on you to kind of coach me and help me through this process. And I said, well, what about your strong-willed client? He says, let me take care of him. Okay, well, as a matter of fact, we got through the process. And this other lawyer was, I give him a lot of credit. He followed up exactly as he said he would. It wasn't an easy case, but it was a case in that he was helpful. He did not impede the process. He really was able to manage his client's conduct, behavior, and we were able to get through with a reasonable agreement. So the learning moment was, you see that you can have unexpected positive outcomes in your collaborative process. Just because you start the process out, and we as lawyers especially will have some preconceived ideas as to, there's going to be challenges here, challenges there. This is not going to work, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes we get unexpected positive results. And I think that comes about, maybe Deb and some of the other mental health professionals can comment about this. And that is that there are a lot of things that can be done in a collaborative process that can shape the process and reshape the process.
Right. Well, just like that other case that you have more recently that you managed to pulled together with an attorney from Naples who also was not collaboratively trained or family law attorney, and really guided him. And I'm in touch with, you know, his family members, because both of you together gave the stamp of approval. Even though they weren't sharing children anymore, the adult children had become estranged from their dad through the divorce process because they heard a lot of negativity from their mom. And you managed to build a plan that gave a stamp of approval for family counseling. And how did you do that with the other side, who you got a lot of scrutiny and questioning about the financial aspects of that, where you preserved their resources? And, you know, the father who, you know, was your client still gives you so much credit, not only for that, but also for seeing ahead and seeing beyond just getting a marital settlement agreement, that you were thinking about the family tree as well, and preserving that set of relationships. And because you, I guess, inspired the mom's attorney, and she was very resistant, she still doesn't want to be part of the process, still you urged her attorney to promote family counseling. And with that, how did you do that? Because it's working. I'm actually getting the adult children on board working with their dad to try to repair it.
Well, you know, whenever you work with folks in this process, and it doesn't have to be collaborative, but it could be any type of a personal process or therapy process. All you can do is all you can do, and all you can do is make suggestions. And then the recipient of our communication, these recipients, first off, they are evaluating us all the time,
Right.
and they know, first off, if we know what we're talking about, and or if we care.
Right.
They know these things. So it's just a matter of feeling things out, you know, and just trying to be helpful. And through the years, Deb and I and others involved in our local family law system, we've always been very creative and innovative in coming up with optional, not optional outcomes, but options to consider to get the best outcome. Even if it's options that's not necessarily, there's no statutory or legal precedence. It may actually be an outcome that's really contrary to what the equitable distribution statute would be, or something like that. But it's something that works for these people. So if you have an idea as to where they're heading and where they're leaning, you may want to suggest this, and you may want to suggest, if you feel it's appropriate, that it may not be consistent with what the law is. So this is something that they need to give that some consideration to, and so forth. But if there's full disclosure and everybody is fully informed, you can be creative, you can be innovative, and it just takes not one case, not two cases, but it takes a lot of cases for all this to be able to work well. So are there any other comments? I see there's some questions. Tammy, do you have a question?
I don't know that I have a question. I love your presentation. I love the discussion of ethics. I personally am at a critical point right now on a case, specifically around the idea of knowing when to fold. And, you know, the idea, there's a therapeutic expression, like for therapists. You can take, and it's very painful and very important. Like it's like fundamental. You can take a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And I am, and I'm a like endless love of learning from everything. And I can't help but want to know more and want to learn about what are the factors that got them to the resolution, whether it was in collaborative or not. But like mostly, like I've had an amazing streak personally. I don't know if I've been lucky. But where I think you learn most is from your failures. And I don't get to see I don't know what happens on the other side. And I want to learn so much from what happens on the other side, and learn from others that are part of that journey from their perspective, to like understand all the factors to see how we can continue to do better. And it's super personal and super important, more now than ever, like in our life right now.
Right. Yes.
You know?
Absolutely. Agreed. Absolutely agree.
That's my that is where I am at right now. So, and your slides are amazing, and your presentation has been awesome for what I've shown up for. So
Thank you.
I want to share with you, Tammy, and all of you, that the first collaborative case I had in 2001 was so easy. And my counterpart colleague was Lee Schreiber in that case, who's now circuit judge here in Lee County.
Thank God.
and unbelievably great. That case was so easy that it gave me sort of a swell head and a misapprehension that, wow, this collaborative stuff is, boy, this is going to be easy. Holy smokes. That was not good to have a first case that was so easy, because the lawyers, we didn't do anything. It was the parties. They didn't have any adult children anymore, and they had mapped out what their settlement would be before they came to see us. And all we did was just go through all the mandatory structure of what a collaborative process is. They were the ones who came up with everything so easily, and it only got harder with the next case.
Right. Right. Expecting challenges.
Yeah. So the more work you do, the more challenging it gets.
Right. Right. And Shelley, you were bringing up a circumstance that was challenging, and talk a little bit about that. It was related to collaborative, and it really had to do with what is our role, and understanding our role, as well as how do we communicate with each other with respect, kindness, courtesy. Can you talk a little bit about that one?
Yes. And I think that in as much as I used to do a lot of mediation work, and keeping people in their roles in mediation with other experts involved, especially financial experts, keeping them in their lane was challenging on occasion, because they felt their role was a little bit more amplified than what their actual role was. Now, Deb Silver and I and Rosemary Roth and several others were giving a presentation many years ago, collaborative presentation.
I was the difficult wife in that.
Yes. I was the husband's lawyer, and I was getting all kinds of difficulty from the bitch who was the wife.
You should have seen the look on his face. It was like, oh my God, Debbie, will you just tone it down? But meanwhile, I was getting, urged by everybody else. We got to get this group more engaged. You got to be more dramatic. And you didn't know that.
That professional presentation had all the paperwork going out, and in doing the rehearsal that morning for the presentation, he was giving us a little outline of what he was going to do, what he was going to say, and so forth. And so he not only had the paperwork filled out, the ED worksheets and the income forms and all these other papers that he would normally do. He was prepared to tell these people how the assets should be allocated for one reason or another, and how to get the best outcome from that. And he was pretty firm that's what he was supposed to do and was going to do. And I got very concerned about that. And I basically suggested that that is not how the collaborative financial professional is. That's not your role. Your role is to not tell these people what to do. Your role is to present them with the information, to educate them, and turn it back over to them so that they have all the information in order to make their decisions. They would ask questions if they needed to, but to tell them what to do was far beyond the role. Now, I don't believe I was terribly, untactful or.
Oh, you're diplomatic, right?
But I felt I just had to do this because it was just going to get us off on the wrong track, and it would present this in this educational format. It would be absolutely the wrong thing to do. It would be incorrect, and it would not be appropriate. So I think we all have come across and we've seen this happen, and I see it in mediation all the time. And a lot of this comes from mediation experience where the mediator also goes beyond his or her role when they start telling the parties what to do, or they do other things beyond the role of the mediator. And I know over the years, mediation has changed, and that some mediators give legal advice, and many mediators prepare a form of marital settlement agreement, whereas many years ago they couldn't do it and they didn't do it. But still, we all need to be sure that we stay in our roles. And I'm wondering if you all have had that experience with any of the experts involved, or even lawyers, because I do not believe it is my role to tell my clients what to do as much as have them understand what all the options are based upon all the facts and factors and everything else for them to be able to make their own decision. So I am very hands off with my clients when it comes to them being able to have self-empowerment to be able to make their own decisions. So I'm interested in any comments.
So I see Randy's got one. Oh, you got to turn your, yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Deb. It's actually more of a question about that to both of you. So, as we do this work over time, we do have maybe ideas that may not fit into our lane, our role, if you will. However, observing and interacting, we may have thoughts and ideas. So first comment is, I always, if it's not in my lane, I'll always on a sidebar, check it out, like with the attorneys, like, I'm thinking about this. What do you think about this? So I'll never do that in front of the clients. I'll only do that as a sidebar in case they say, oh yeah, no, not a good idea. But I'm on a matter right now where we're almost done. And there's one remaining issue, and they're stuck, and they're going round and round, and the lawyers are going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and it's expensive, and these people are running out of money. And I've kind of stepped back because the parenting issues are resolved and we're communicating, and I've just stepped back because it's a financial issue. That said, the husband reached out to me and he said, okay, we've resolved the parenting issues, which was very, very challenging, but we did that. What do you think about this? How can you help me? My thought is bring in a mediator, because they are just going round and round and round and round and round. The lawyers just won't let go. They just won't let go. And they keep saying, no, it's too expensive to start over with a mediator. They have to be caught up. They have to do this. They have to do that. The bottom line is they just don't want to let go. And, we can settle it. And really what I said to them was respectfully, if you could settle it, you probably would have settled it, but you can't. It's months, literally months, probably 5 months of roundabout. So where do you go with that? I've kept my mouth shut now because I don't want to step on their toes, but the husband is looking to me like, make this happen. And I really can't. So what are your thoughts, both of you?
I have some ideas.
Good. You would.
Probably the first thing I would do is I would ask the lawyers, the experts, or just get the team together.
Right.
And I would say to the team, would it be appropriate to ask the parties, and should we first have a discussion here among us as to what is the goal here?
Right.
I mean, what are you all trying to accomplish here?
Right.
And first off, can we understand and define that we have one remaining issue? Can we go there? Is that what we need to do, is to settle this one remaining issue to get this whole case over with? Okay. So if that's what we need to do, then let's see how we can go about doing it. So we need to know, what are their goals? What do they want to achieve? And are we doing that? And ask them, how might we, and how might you do that? How can you all help us help you do that? What's going to work for you? Okay, so that's one scenario. Another scenario would be where you get the team together and you say to the team, would it be appropriate for the two lawyers, for us to try to work together to come up with a resolution on this one particular issue that we would recommend to the parties? But before we do that, we get the parties' consent if they would agree to that option. Okay, so that's another one where the lawyers, because we all would think that the lawyers are going to be a lot more clear-headed than their clients who can't see the nose in front of their face on this one remaining issue because they're stuck. So that's another option. There are a myriad of other options. Bring a mediator in, but not to mediate the entire situation.
Oh, just this
Right.
one.
Just that one issue. Right.
One issue.
It's the house. So she wants to stay in the house. He needs a cash. He needs a buyout or something, or sell the house. And they just cannot agree. So, and they can't afford it. Everybody on the team agrees they need to sell the house.
Right.
So I just thought a new set of eyes, a new voice, someone who hasn't been so emotionally invested, because right now, the other thing is they're going to end up going to litigate it, which is ridiculous. So
it is, right. So
And-
getting in a neutral financial expert coming in with a new set of eyes just to hear what are the facts and generating as many solutions as they
that
could.
might be a great idea. Neutral financial. That might be a great idea, Deb. Thank you.
And just a bunch of different, and I'm thinking of someone like Leslie Ellis who could do something like that, or may he rest in peace, good old Daryl Bockert would be, or Todd McGee, or or Trish, going to them and saying, what are your ideas on this? This one wants this one wants that, knowing all the financial aspects of the case. How many solutions can you come up, like, you could have this choice, this choice, this choice, this choice, and rank order them, and then, have some way of, if they both rank ordered number 2, then that might be, if one's number 1 was different than the other one's number 1, but number 2 was the same, it could be a way of resolving it, but it's in their hands.
Yeah, and I love the suggestions that are coming out, and yours too, Deb, about a financial person as opposed to, because maybe the lawyers are thinking, we don't need another lawyer. So that really brings something to light for me. Maybe a financial person would be a great idea. So thank you, everyone.
Shelley and I love the financial people.
Yeah,
They
that's
set
great.
us free.
That's great. I hadn't thought of that. Thank you, everyone.
There was also a comment about bringing in a mortgage specialist, which is a good idea. Because
Yeah,
there are a lot of creative ways and knowledge that these mortgage specialists have.
Right.
yes. Well, what I'm hearing is take it away from bringing in another lawyer, because that's what the
Yeah.
lawyers are resisting.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's great. Thank you, everyone.
Now, there's also something else that might scare people, but bringing in or having information from a retired judge.
Right.
So
That's a great
you're
one.
going to litigate this one issue. It's going to involve,
Right.
and so the retired judge and the judge that Deb and I worked with for many, many years, and all of us working together to create our cooperative process and reform our family law system, Hugh Starnes.
Right.
He had volunteered to come into our collaborative process in a role of that fashion to help if we thought it would be needed. And so that's just another crazy idea.
Well, but it was so effective because people felt like they got their day in court in a collaborative meeting, and they had a judge seasoned, and they, there's the placebo effect part of it of, we really made sure they understood who was going to come in. This isn't just a Joe Schmo, whatever, or Josephina Schmo. This is somebody with incredible wisdom and years of family law work as a judge. And for them to have that time, when we used that as an option, it was very powerful. It moved people beyond sticking points so quickly. So Shelley, I'm glad you brought that one up.
Okay, I know it's time probably. So
we're listening to words of wisdom from you all.
Yeah. If you all want to stay on, Eric, if it's appropriate or not, if there's any other comments or questions. We certainly enjoyed talking to everybody today, seeing everybody today. It's sort of like old home week for me. It all is when I'm able to get back into the FACP fold. So I appreciate being.
Shelley, we know we got to get over to to the April meeting in Boca, right?
That's right. Yeah. And so if you all see Deb and I anywhere, anytime, and you want to, make sure you come up to us and introduce yourselves, or if you're an old friend, talk to us, and we'd love to talk to you. And if you've got situations you'd like to discuss with us, and we'd be happy to talk to you.
Thank you all.
So
yeah, if you all are complete, I'm going to sign off. Sheila had to get running, but on behalf of the Outreach Committee and the FACP, thank you, Deb and Shelley, for this presentation and this discussion. Lots of great feedback already in the chat. And to all of our attendees, don't forget to mark your calendars for April 18th through 20th for the FACP conference in Boca Raton, Florida. Registration and more information hopefully should be going out relatively soon. So thank you everyone for attending today.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.